My cruel in-laws laughed at my struggles, then my shocking surprise turned their lives upside down. They say silence is golden. And on that crisp autumn evening, as the clinking of crystal and the hushed murmurs of polite society filled the grand dining hall of the Thorne estate, silence really was my most potent weapon. My mother-in-law, Matrona, a woman whose every utterance was designed to sting, raised her champagne flute. Her eyes gleamed with a triumph that was almost grotesque. Her husband, Ignatius, a man equally devoid of empathy, sat beside her, a smug smile plastered across his face, basking in her reflected glory. To Lyra, Matrona announced, her voice dripping with mock sincerity, whose challenges have truly opened our eyes to the simpler things in life. And to us, who have so generously supported her through this trying period. A ripple of strained laughter followed, and I could feel their eyes on me. My perceived misfortune, my seemingly endless struggles, had become their latest source of entertainment, a public spectacle designed to reinforce their own superior standing. They believed they had won, that they had successfully broken me, reduced me to a mere supplicant reliant on their scraps. They saw my quiet demeanor, my almost serene acceptance of their barbs, as proof of my defeat. I simply smiled, a small, knowing upturn of my lips that I knew they would misinterpret as meekness. My gaze swept over the opulent room, taking in every detail, the intricate patterns on the antique Persian rug, the gleam of the Renaissance paintings, the heavy, ornate drapes that framed the moonlit garden outside. Each piece, to them, was a testament to their inherited wealth, a symbol of their unshakable power. But to me, they were merely props in a play, ill-gotten gains built on a foundation of meticulously concealed lies. My mind, usually a whirlwind of calculations and cross-references, was unusually still. The storm was coming, and I was merely waiting for the perfect moment to unleash it. They had no idea that the struggles they so gleefully mocked were, in fact, the final, crucial act of a performance I had been meticulously directing for months, a performance designed to illuminate every dark corner of their lives and expose the rot within. The true surprise, the one that would turn their carefully constructed world upside down, was not merely on its way, it was already here, nestled quietly within my grasp, waiting for the precisely calibrated moment of its release. My life had been a canvas of vibrant colors before a sudden, cruel stroke of fate rendered it monochrome. Elias, my husband, was the anchor of my world, a kind, brilliant soul who had always sheltered me from the harsher realities. Our life together, though modest, was rich in love and shared dreams. I was a graphic designer, passionate about art and creation, and he, a budding entrepreneur, always full of innovative ideas. Then came the phone call that shattered everything. A heart attack, sudden, unexpected. He was gone, and with him, a significant chunk of my future. The immediate grief was overwhelming, but soon, a new, equally daunting challenge emerged: the debts. Elias had been private about his business dealings, and after his death, I discovered a labyrinth of unexpected liabilities, loans, and commitments that dwarfed our savings. This was when the true nature of the Thornes, Elias's parents, revealed itself. Prior to Elias's passing, they had been condescending but tolerable, seeing me as a suitable, if somewhat common, match for their son. But with Elias gone, I was no longer a connection to their precious bloodline, I was merely a burden, a loose end. Matrona and Ignatius, never ones to miss an opportunity to assert their perceived superiority, wasted no time. They offered help, which always came with a hefty price tag of humiliation and servitude. They demanded I move into their sprawling estate, citing the need to keep an eye on me and ensure I wasn't squandering the meager inheritance Elias had, or rather, hadn't, left. Every meal was an interrogation, every effort I made to find work was met with derision. A graphic designer? My dear, you'll barely make enough for bus fare, Matrona would sneer. You should be grateful for our charity, Lyra. Without us, you'd be on the streets. Their constant belittling, their cruel laughter at my attempts to sell my modest possessions, their suggestions that I was incapable of managing my own life, chipped away at my spirit, but never broke it. Instead, something else began to form within me, a quiet, burning resolve. It began with a tiny discrepancy I noticed while sorting through Elias's old papers, a transaction that didn't quite add up, a strange name linked to an offshore account, My graphic designer's eye, trained to spot the smallest detail, refused to let it go. I started pulling at threads, initially out of morbid curiosity, then out of a growing suspicion that something far more sinister lay beneath the Thorne family's polished facade. This was my turning point. I realized their fortune was built on something far more questionable than mere old money. I knew I couldn't fight them with their own weapons, social status or inherited wealth. But I could fight them with intelligence, with truth, and with the very meticulousness I had honed in my former profession. I devoured books on forensic accounting, spent countless hours on obscure financial forums, and enrolled in intensive online courses in financial analysis and legal frameworks. My grief became an excuse to isolate myself in my small room at their estate. I'd pore over documents, learning the intricate language of balance sheets and corporate structures. This was my secret weapon, forged in the fires of their disdain, the ability to dissect complex financial data, to connect disparate dots, and to unearth the hidden truths that lay buried beneath decades of deceit. My struggles weren't just real, they were a carefully constructed cover, allowing me to observe, to learn, and to prepare the precise, surgical strike that would dismantle their empire from within. With my newfound purpose, my struggles became less a burden and more, well, a strategic performance. I leaned into their expectations, appearing increasingly defeated, perpetually on the brink of financial collapse. I wore worn clothes, spoke in hushed tones, and occasionally expressed despair over my inability to secure a stable job. "Oh, Lyra, still dabbling in your little online courses?" Matrona would inquire, her voice laced with amusement. She'd say, "Trying to catch up, dear? It's never too late to learn, I suppose, even if it's entirely futile for your situation." Ignatius would chime in, "Perhaps you should marry again, Lyra. Someone wealthy, who can support you. You're not getting any younger, and your particular set of skills isn't exactly in high demand." Their words, like tiny daggers, bounced off the impenetrable shield of my resolve. Each insult, each belittling remark, only fueled my determination. Meanwhile, behind the facade of desperation, I was a silent, relentless investigator. My days became a meticulous dance of gathering evidence. I would volunteer to sort through old family papers, ostensibly to help Matrona organize her archives, but in reality, I was searching for the crucial missing links. I'd accidentally overhear conversations between Ignatius and his associates, feigning disinterest while my mind catalogued every whispered name, every cryptic reference to off-book accounts or creative asset management. I spent nights hunched over my laptop, using the outdated library computer they'd reluctantly allowed me to use, cross-referencing public records with the private documents I'd managed to discreetly scan. I learned to navigate complex corporate registries, piecing together the intricate web of shell companies and offshore holdings the Thornes had meticulously constructed. They grew bolder, more careless, convinced of my utter incompetence. Matrona would openly discuss their tax advantages over afternoon tea, while Ignatius would occasionally grumble about the old days and how much easier it was to move money before stricter regulations. They saw me as a furniture piece, a background character, unworthy of their notice. This was their gravest mistake. Their arrogance was my greatest asset. They left crucial documents lying around, assuming I wouldn't understand them: old bank statements, property deeds with suspiciously low valuations, internal memos discussing investment opportunities that looked suspiciously like money laundering schemes. I even discovered a hidden compartment in Ignatius's old desk, a relic he probably thought was long forgotten, containing ledgers filled with handwritten codes and cryptic entries that, once deciphered with my newly acquired skills, painted a horrifying picture of decades of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and illicit dealings. The puzzle was slowly coming together, piece by painstaking piece. I wasn't just observing, I was building a case, documenting every cent, every transaction, every fraudulent signature. I created digital copies, encrypted them, and stored them in multiple secure locations. I identified the key players, the precise mechanisms of their deception, and the true scale of their ill-gotten gains. The struggles I displayed were not merely a means to an end, they were an integral part of my strategy, lulling my antagonists into a false sense of security, making them overconfident, and ultimately, ensuring their complete and utter downfall. I wasn't just playing their game, I was rewriting the rules. It was Ignatius Thorne's 70th birthday, a truly lavish affair, held in the grand ballroom of a prestigious hotel. Matrona had spared no expense, transforming the space into a spectacle of opulence designed to reinforce their social standing. Dignitaries, business associates, and long-standing family friends mingled, sipping champagne and offering effusive praise to the patriarch. Ignatius, resplendent in a tailored suit, held court, his chest puffed out with self-importance. Matrona, draped in diamonds, moved among their guests like a queen, her eyes constantly scanning for any sign of imperfection. And there I was, in a simple, unassuming black dress, a silent shadow in their glorious tableau, just as they preferred me to be. After the endless toasts and Ignatius's overly long speech about his legacy and hard-earned success, Matrona took the stage. She beckoned me forward with a patronizing gesture. "And now, a special word for our dear Lyra," she announced, her voice oozing with performative sympathy. "We're so proud of her resilience, despite her limited circumstances. We've even managed to secure her a modest position with one of Ignatius's charitable foundations. A small way to contribute, isn't it, dear?" The audience offered polite, pitying applause. Ignatius gave me a knowing wink, a silent reminder of my supposed debt to them. This was their final humiliation, a public spectacle of my dependence. I took the microphone, my heart beating a steady, calm rhythm against my ribs. My voice, when I spoke, was clear and steady, devoid of the tremor they expected. "Thank you, Matrona, Ignatius," I began, my gaze sweeping over the astonished faces in the room. "And thank you, everyone, for coming together tonight to celebrate Ignatius's 70 years. It's truly a milestone, and it's given me a unique opportunity to reflect on the meaning of legacy and hard work within the Thorne family." A few confused whispers rippled through the crowd. Matrona's smile faltered, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. "You see," I continued, projecting my voice just enough to carry, "when Elias passed, I inherited not just grief, but a profound curiosity. A graphic designer's eye, as you know, is trained to spot details, patterns, and discrepancies. And what I found, as I navigated the complexities of the Thorne family's wealth, was indeed quite detailed." With a subtle nod to a technician I had discreetly hired, the large screen behind the stage, which had previously been displaying flattering photos of Ignatius, flickered to life. The first image was a complex flowchart, showing a web of intertwined companies. "You speak of charitable foundations, Matrona," I said, pointing to a particularly convoluted section of the chart. But what I discovered was that many of these charities were, in fact, shell corporations, meticulously designed to funnel illicit funds. Funds, I might add, that weren't always earned legitimately. Gasps erupted through the room. Ignatius's face was beginning to pale. Matrona's jaw tightened. I clicked to the next slide, scanned copies of bank statements, highlighted sections revealing massive, unexplained transfers to offshore accounts. "For decades," I explained, my tone calm, almost detached, "the Thorne family fortune hasn't grown through shrewd investments, but through what I've accurately identified as a systematic pattern of fraud, embezzlement, and a substantial degree of money laundering. These transactions, ladies and gentlemen, have been meticulously documented. The original ledgers, the coded entries for illicit profits, the forged signatures, I have them all. I even projected a blown-up image of Ignatius's old desk ledger, complete with my deciphered annotations." The room erupted into chaos. Whispers turned into shouts. Matrona's face contorted in a mask of pure fury and terror. She lunged towards me, shrieking, "You viper! You ungrateful wretch!" Ignatius, meanwhile, looked as if he'd seen a ghost, his bravado vanished, replaced by a ghastly pallor. "This is slander." "Lies," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Not lies, Ignatius," I countered, stepping back, my eyes fixed on theirs. "Facts. I've spent months living under your roof, enduring your cruelty, not as a victim, but as an investigator. Every one of your cruel jokes about my struggles fueled my resolve to expose the truth. You thought I was broken, dependent. But I was merely gathering evidence, piecing together the very fabric of your lies. The police and financial authorities, by the way, have already been furnished with a comprehensive dossier of everything you see here tonight, and more. They're likely already on their way. The sheer scale of their betrayal, the precision of my evidence, and the public nature of the reveal hit them with the force of a physical blow. Their lives, built on a foundation of deceit, were crumbling right before their eyes. The immediate fallout was pure pandemonium. The elegant ballroom, moments before a picture of refined normalcy, devolved into utter chaos. Matrona's shrieks echoed through the hall as she tried to snatch the microphone from my hand, only to be restrained by a few flustered guests. Ignatius, who had initially attempted to stride forward and silence me, found himself paralyzed, his face a grotesque mask of shock and disbelief. He looked utterly vanquished, a puppet whose strings had been abruptly cut. The murmurs of the crowd escalated into a cacophony of gasps, accusations, and frantic phone calls. Many guests, prominent figures in their own right, began discreetly making their way towards the exits, eager to distance themselves from the unfolding scandal. Others, genuinely horrified, stared at the Thorns with a mixture of disgust and belated understanding. Within minutes, hotel security, responding to the commotion, appeared, quickly followed by the distinct wail of sirens approaching from outside. I remained calm, stepping away from the microphone and letting the evidence on the screen speak for itself. When the uniformed officers entered, their presence immediately quelled the worst of the chaos. I calmly approached one of them, stating my name and reiterating that I had provided them with extensive documentation. It wasn't long before Matrona and Ignatius, still sputtering denials and threats, found themselves being escorted from their own birthday celebration, their faces red with rage and humiliation. The diamonds on Matrona's neck seemed to mock her, sparkling in the harsh light of their public disgrace. They were no longer the imperious Thorns, they were merely two criminals facing the imminent collapse of their entire world. The aftermath was swift and devastating for them. The story, fueled by the dozens of influential witnesses present, exploded across every news outlet by morning. The intricate details of their multi-decades-long financial fraud, their shell companies, their illicit dealings, all laid bare for the world to see. Their assets were frozen almost immediately. Their prestigious friends vanished overnight, replaced by a deluge of angry investors, defrauded partners, and relentless investigative journalists. Their lavish estate, once a symbol of their power, became a crime scene, and then a confiscated asset. The police investigations deepened, uncovering even more layers of their deception, leading to further charges. The initial shock among their social circle quickly turned into a mixture of condemnation and a profound sense of betrayal. Many realized they had been unwitting participants in or beneficiaries of a criminal enterprise. As for me, I simply walked away from that scene, the weight of their cruelty finally lifted from my shoulders. There was no triumphant yell, no dramatic gesture. Just a quiet sense of justice being served. I had endured their abuse, not as a victim, but as an architect of their downfall. The meticulous detail I had poured into my investigation, the years of silent suffering under their roof, had all culminated in this moment. Watching them being led away, stripped of their power and prestige, wasn't an act of revenge. It was a profound vindication of every tear I had shed and every insult I had endured. Their grand facade had crumbled, revealing the rotten core beneath, and I, the humble graphic designer they had so cruelly mocked, had been the one to strike the final, fatal blow. Months passed, then a year. The Thorn name, once synonymous with old money and social influence, became a whisper of scandal, a cautionary tale. Matrona and Ignatius faced a barrage of charges, and with the overwhelming evidence I had provided, combined with additional findings from the authorities, their defense was futile. They were convicted, their sentences lengthy, their reputation irrevocably tarnished. Their vast fortune, revealed to be largely ill-gotten, was seized. Much of it was allocated to restitution for the countless individuals and entities they had defrauded over the years. They were stripped of everything that defined them, their wealth, their status, and their freedom. Forced to confront the true poverty of their own character, they ended up precisely where their actions deserved to place them, in a place devoid of the very things they valued most. My life, thankfully, blossomed. The notoriety of the Thorn case brought unexpected opportunities. My detailed financial analysis skills, proven under such extreme pressure, were precisely what a niche consulting firm specializing in fraud investigation was looking for. I joined them, not for revenge, but for the profound satisfaction of using my mind to right wrongs. My graphic design background, far from being irrelevant, proved invaluable in visualizing complex financial data, making it accessible and understandable. I bought a small, sun-drenched apartment, filled it with my own art, and surrounded myself with genuine connections. People who valued honesty and intellect. I no longer had to pretend to struggle. My independence was real, hard-earned, and deeply gratifying. The quiet strength I had cultivated during those dark days became the bedrock of my new life. What I learned through this harrowing journey is a truth often overlooked. True power doesn't reside in inherited wealth or social standing, nor does it manifest in loud displays of arrogance or the public humiliation of others. Real strength lies in resilience, in the quiet cultivation of knowledge, and in the unwavering belief in truth. My in-laws, in their hubris, saw my struggle as weakness, my silence as defeat. They failed to understand that the most dangerous opponents are often the ones underestimated, those who observe, learn, and strategize in the shadows. Their greed blinded them, their cruelty sealed their fate, and their belief in their own untouchability led to their catastrophic downfall. This experience taught me that while the world may sometimes appear to reward the dishonest and the cruel, ultimately, the weight of truth, combined with quiet determination, will always rise to claim its due. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Their minds often harbor the most profound strategies, and their patience can dismantle the most formidable empires.